So I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness, but I wasn't born into it and I wasn't raised into it. I was converted at age 14 and a half, and what I found was there is quite a bit of gap between those Jehovah's Witnesses who had been born and raised into it and those who would come into the organisation later on in life. So let me explain. So first of all, the number one difference is obviously the amount of time. Someone who has been born and bred into it has spent in the religion or the cult, versus obviously someone who's been recruited. So they are basically having to learn things from scratch. And obviously the second biggest difference is the amount of knowledge that they will possess compared to somebody who has just been recruited or recently baptized, who was not raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So what I personally found, the ones that were born and raised as Jehovah's Witnesses and carried on being Jehovah's Witnesses, I found I could split them into two groups. So the first group would be the ones that were very happy to talk to you about what the organisation stands for and the history of the organisation. Of course, they would omit anything that wasn't positive, so they would not mention any negative aspects. Those would only come up if I would actually ask a question, if I'd have heard from someone, oh, what's this thing about 1975, what happened then? And only then I would get an explanation about that the Armageddon was being expected in 1975 because they calculated that Adam had apparently was the creation of Adam would have been 6,000 years from then. Speculation again, and that a lot of people left after 1975 because it didn't happen. Now the other group. The other group of the born and raised JWs that had stayed as JWs, what I found was they were incredibly toxic. They were full of themselves. They thought as better than others. I found them always looking down on me, and only wanted to associate with the higher ranking members of like elders, ministerial servants, pioneers. And if you went up to scratch to their standards, they wanted very little to do with you. Whenever they would hear you give maybe an incorrect viewpoint, because when you become a Jehovah's Witness, there is a lot of things that will take years to find out. So especially in the beginning, whenever I would give an opinion or what I thought, the correction I would receive from these would be very haughty and almost like, well, you stupid, you don't know what you're talking about. So after a while, I learned to keep my mouth shut and just not say anything. So that's what I found as someone who was recruited as a Jehovah's Witness versus the ones that were born and grown up as Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I said, those are just my experiences. So if anyone wants to share their experiences, especially if you were not born and brought up as a Jehovah's Witness, but that's what I found. I found that there were some that were happy to tell you about things and would sort of try and cover up the past, but were still happy for them to be questioned, because it's when you're new in something like that, you don't really know much. and there's a lot of things you don't understand. So there were a lot of watchtowers that just went over my head because they were too complicated and I didn't understand it. And then you've got the other group who just think you're a piece of crap, you know nothing, and they're so much better than you, and you can never measure up to them because they've got all this, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm, you know, chosen from birth, basically. And they're the ones that eventually, obviously, they excluded me anyway because I wasn't up to standard. So yeah, please feel free to share your experience. I'm be quite interested to find out how other people found it, especially if you were recruited later on in life rather than being born and raised into it, or even if you like were born as a witness, brought up as a witness, and then left later on and went back, how people viewed you, because it's just interesting to compare what experiences others had and what trauma you got from these experiences. And hopefully it can help someone who is thinking about joining the Jehovah's Witnesses or is studying with them, and you know, just make them slow down and think, do I really want to get into this? So yeah,